Combine 5 unique distinctions. A leading expert on aging. Educator. Entrepreneur. Visionary. Co-founder of Afro Latin Jazz Alliance. And what do you have? Tom Kamber, Executive Director of OATS, Older Adults Technology Services, and also Senior Planet Exploration Centers. Join us on this whirlwind tour to learn about how OATS grew to 23 centers in Greater New York, 7 centers nationwide, and now emerging an international presence.
Welcome everyone today to another session of Pause for Purpose on a Wednesday 4 o'clock afternoon. We're always delighted to have you join us and to be a part of us. Our speaker, our featured guest today, I'm very honored to have him, is Tom Kamber, who is the founder and executive director of OATS, Older Adult Technology Services and Senior Planet. Tom is a leading expert on aging and technology. He's regularly featured in national media and has presented his work on over 5 continents. So many of you have said, don't labor on the bio, they already know him. So we don't want to take away from Tom's presentation. So let's start today, Tom, by telling us, where did you grow up and where did you spend your youth?
I was born in Maine, and I grew up in various parts of New England. And then I moved to New Jersey when I was in 7th grade, and I lived in Asbury Park for most of my upbringing. So all those Bruce Springsteen songs about being on the beach by the palace and all that stuff, that was me in the 80s.
So where did you go to college?
I moved to New York to go to college at Columbia in 1985.
All right.
And I did my graduate work at the City University of New York, and I got my PhD there in the late 90s.
And so what was your first job?
Oh boy, my first job after I moved to New York, probably. I worked for the Regional Plan Association, which was an urban planning organization, doing kind of helping them draft kind of policy background memos for the city's economic and transportation development. And at night I worked for the railroad. The cool job I had was I worked for the PATH train, which is the train that runs under the river between New Jersey and New York. And I swung a pick in the structure maintenance teams, and we dug drainage ditches all night from midnight to 8 a.m. That was the cool job.
Oh my gosh.
That was a great job. I love that.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about you and Whitney, your wife, lived on a boat for for years, right? And then you traveled on your boat?
Yep. When Whitney met me, I was living on a sailboat in Jersey City. I woke up one day and looked at my rent costs, and every year I was always running out to my boat because I love boats, and I would spend all of my time trying to get to the boat earlier and knock off work, et cetera. And I woke up one day and said, why am I killing myself to get to the boat when I could just go live on it and put it in a nicer marina? So I lived on a boat for about 2.5, 3 years, and really enjoyed it. And Whitney came and spent a lot of time with me. And when we first met, I had to explain that wasn't the craziest thing in the world to do. And then we got a trawler, which we had fixed up down in New Orleans, a 55-foot Choi Lee from 1975. And then we spent last spring and into the summer and fall, cruising on that, bringing it from New Orleans all the way around the coast of Florida and up into New York. And we spent a few months on it here in the city working. We kept our apartment because we've got kids, but we spent a few nights a week on the boat every week. It was great. So
now the boat is, and you've anchored yourself to a mortgage payment and you are now a homeowner.
Correct. I've started looking into things like radiant heating and roof tile shingles and all the things that I haven't owned a home in a really long time. So I haven't had grass to cut. We've got a lawn out here, and I'm like, we just moved out of New York City into Long Island and Freeport. And I'm looking at all this grass, like, what do I do with the grass? Everybody out here has lawn mowing services that they subscribe to. So I got to sort that out. But it's exciting. We have more space, and there's a dock here, so we can be close to the water. It's a nice change.
So let's talk a little bit about, you taught classes on technology. Where did you do that, and how long did you teach?
Well, I started with OATS, really. I mean, I guess originally, oh boy, I was a tenant organizer before I started OATS. I worked in housing for about 10 years. And a lot of the buildings that we worked with had computers that they used to run their finances. This is back in the days of DOS, with the command prompts, right? And I was the guy that was often training them to do a lot of their technical work. And so I did a little bit of training then. And when I finished my degree and I was looking for a kind of a career change. I guess that's the future purpose idea here. So it's probably relevant. And I thought, what's really relevant to my generation that would be my version of, I don't know, the civil rights movement or the environmental, movement, or just something that felt really, present. And technology was really taking off. That was just around the time that the World Wide Web was created. And so I started looking for nonprofit technology jobs where I could do work with what I thought about as social impact technology. I started out this job working for a group called One Economy. And after 9/11, we were supported by the JP Morgan Chase Foundation to try to create some technology resources to help rebuild Lower Manhattan. And a lot of people lived down in Lower Manhattan. There were a lot of Lower Manhattan, and there were a lot of businesses. And so my job was to create a community online that would highlight all of the resources down there. And while I was doing that, it was called Voices of Lower Manhattan. And we brought together all sorts of neat community, resources and storytelling. And it really helped raise awareness about Manhattan as that part of the city still as a place to revisit and move back to. And while I was doing that, there was an older woman who lived in Lower Manhattan who called me up and said she wanted to come to the web party, but she didn't really know what the web was and wasn't sure she would feel comfortable. So we became friends, and I started tutoring her, and she was really the first older adult that I really taught on the computers. And that was about 2002 or 2003. And that led to me starting OATS. That was the first part of it.
So you started OATS and you needed a building, correct?
Well, not right away. So when we started, I started by connecting to my housing partners. I went out to housing buildings and said, I have this site. Most of the people who run low-income housing developments are older people. So if you go to a tenants association meeting in, the Bronx, it's going to be, 7 people over the age of 60 and like 1 younger person, but it's, it tends to be an older crowd. And so I went back to the buildings I worked with and I said, I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit to work with older adults in technology. Would you be willing to let me come and treat you like my guinea pigs, and you can help me figure out how to do it? And they were really generous with their time, and people said, we love the idea. And, they entrusted me because I had helped them with their buildings before. And so I started out by going from space to space with a notebook and learning about different training models and building up a curriculum. And I guess because there was nothing there when we started, it was me at my kitchen table with my dog. There wasn't really a need for a center because I got used to working in other people's centers. And New York City has 240 senior centers. And so there's a kind of endless supply of places to go. And many of them had computer labs or interest in doing computer programming. And so for the first 7 years, it was kind of itinerant. We went from place to place, and we were teaching at 70 locations before we ever started our first building that we put our own name on. And it was interesting because we thought we had kind of already developed as much as we were going to do. And adding in our own facility was just simply about creating a centralized place to do it. But that actually turned out to be not true. And a lot of changes came after we started our own center. That was in 2013. And I started OATS in 2004.
Wow. So when you worked at the senior centers, and you said you were an itinerant, you traveled from senior center to senior center, were you teaching the seniors at that time how to get on the internet, how to order online, how to whatever a senior wanted to do that either their grandchildren or their children were doing?
Yes, I mean the primary things that people were really interested in were a lot of people had never seen the web. So at the time it was the World Wide Web. What's this web? What is www? what is it, why is that not on my computer? Or why do I need to go on the internet to see the web? Like, people were really learning about it in the very beginning. And a lot of people, the other big application was email. A lot of older people wanted email. It was a way of communicating across space, for people. And a lot of their families were on email as well. And so they wanted, there's a lot of desire to learn email and a desire to learn how to surf the internet, because there was a sense of a lot of people were just watching TV commercials and feeling excluded from the dialogue. Like, there was this, people used to say, there's a conversation going on and I feel like I'm not part of it, and so those are the big apps. We taught some stuff on using electronic medical services systems that came up when those started out. We did a lot of work on Medicare Part D for a couple of years when that was in the very beginning of OATS. When they created Medicare Part D, you may recall there was what they called the Plan Finder tool, because people had to choose a plan. And in order to choose a plan, you had to match up what medications you were taking with the costs that those medications would charge under different plans. The only way to do that systematically was to create, fill out web-based forms, enter the medications, and then they would scan all of the plans and give you the best choices. And so people, we did programs all over the Bronx where we actually created a peer training initiative that helped people learn how to do Medicare Part D and sign up for the better plans. And, we saved a lot of money, a lot of people, small amounts of money. And in a couple of cases, we really saved some lives. There was a woman that came in that was giving up her union finance plan, which is a really good plan, and she had been kind of talked into getting a Medicare Part D plan that was totally inappropriate for her. And the peer educators managed to get the union plan back to her and get her the right systems. But in many cases, that was a kind of gateway for technology for a lot of older users. So it's really a range of different topics. But of course, today it's really different, but things have evolved a lot since then.
So you then get a building. Where is your building? And how did you come by this particular building? Did you have help? Did somebody say, I've got some space for you? How did you get your first building, which became known as Senior Planet?
The first program is kind of a funny story. There was for years and years, we had always been telling the city, we wanted to have a center. We wanted to do more systematic work and get funded by the city. And we were always told, well, you're not really a senior center. You don't serve meals. So we can't really provide any funding to something that doesn't have meals in it, because everything is encumbered with these meals restrictions. And in around 2010, in the stimulus package after the economic crisis, there was a new initiative called the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program, BTOP. Everybody called it BTOP. And that was like $5 billion from the federal government to support broadband education and broadband adoption training and technology labs around the country. And we contacted the city and said, we think this is a real game changer. Here's what we would do if we had $5 million. And so we sent them a budget with a whole set of proposals, and they called back and said, well, we're interested, but we're not sure exactly what the city's application is going to look like. When it came time to apply and the mayor's office was preparing the application, they had left out seniors. And they were going to apply for all this broadband money, but not have any of it for seniors. And we called up Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer and complained. And they called the mayor's office and said, you're not submitting a broadband application without including seniors. You have to put seniors in it. And at that point, that deadline was like 2 days away. And so they called us back and said, you guys had a plan with that seniors thing. And so we sent it over, and they used our plan. They just took off our logo and put the city's logo on it and put it in as part of their plan. And so we just got put into their budget. It ended up getting whittled down, I think, to about $3 million. But it was a dream come true, because it had a center. It had money in there for 24 other centers around the city that we would build as community computer labs. It had money for the website development, for the curriculum. And so that really accelerated us and was a real game changer. And that's what allowed us to rent a space. It's actually a homeless shelter there's a homeless shelter upstairs and a beautiful commercial space downstairs on 25th Street in Manhattan. So we got that space, and the rent was built into the budget. We did that program for 3 years. And at the end of it, we had so many people participating that really loved it that we were able to go back to the mayor's office and say, well, now, you didn't have to create the program. We got it up and running with federal money, but if you don't put city money into this, it's going to end. And they created a budget for it, and they got money out of a different department, out of the technology department. And that contract is still what we use for most of our work in New York City today.
Wow, that's amazing.
Crazy
So
story.
you're working with Mayor de Blasio now.
We work with Mayor de Blasio.
Interesting. And are you still connected to senior centers? I mean, can the senior centers kind of log in to classes that you may be teaching about how to use Zoom or how to shop online or?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do a lot of different classes where, first of all, we teach in senior centers. So if we can get supported in certain target areas like New York or San Antonio, Texas, Avenidas out in Palo Alto, California, all over Colorado, we've been doing work, and also in Montgomery County, Maryland, we come up with contracts mostly locally funded with some corporate support or philanthropic support, but we go teach in the senior centers with our staff. So all they have to do is recruit people for the classes, and we'll show up with the books and and everything and teach for them and teach the programming, and then share the metrics back with them so they can see the results. And we were doing about 200 centers simultaneously before COVID, and we'll get back to that for sure. And then we do a lot of our programming is also open for whoever wants to participate. All of our classes are free to the end user. So there's a lot of senior centers that send their seniors to our programs online. And we love that. It just adds to the numbers and makes it more universal and more inclusive.
So how many are you serving now? How many people are?
Well, online, we did 212,000 in the last 12 months.
Wow, that's great. And what's the most popular program that is the most widely requested or the most widely used?
Fitness is the biggest. It was Zoom. We had a lot of Zoom classes. We had one Zoom class with 10,000 people on it last summer, which was insane. And kind of wonderful, like we'd never, we took us, I think, 7 years to reach our 10,000th participant. And we did one session last summer with 10,000 people simultaneously. So you can imagine what that felt like,
Right.
But what happens is we've had kind of two on-ramps, two funnels. On the one side, there's all the programs we used to run. And so I got on a session the other day, we were doing a focus group on design thinking and aging. And several of the people on that call were people that I knew from having met them in the centers years ago. And so a lot of people coming to Senior Planet are still coming in looking for that programming, that sense of community, the sense of family, and they're joined by more and more people that are just sort of filtering into that environment. And then on the other side, there's kind of the broad, sort of scope of the internet, people that are searching on technology and seniors or technology classes that just find us. They've never met us. They could be from anywhere in the world. We have people from the Netherlands and from England, and they'll come on and participate more kind of to take a class here and there, but they're not quite as intensive with it. So the program that's gotten the most traction, though, is a thing called Morning Stretch. And it's one of our trainers who used to do our fitness classes where we would get about 12 or 15 people per session face-to-face. And then we would use some technology to help people learn about fitness tracking and setting music playlists and things like that. And that program, when we put it online, turned out to be a rock star program. And now we have 300 or 400 or 500 people in the program every session. And people tell me it's a lifeline, that it's I had a woman tell me just this week, she said, this has kept me sane during COVID. She said, it's the most important thing I do every day. And it's incredibly powerful for them. So that's been the number one. And then we do all sorts of, we do financial security classes on online banking and online shopping. We have a whole series of programs on social engagement for people to learn things like, Zoom and Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. Those are very popular. Email classes are still popular. But really it's trending toward the fitness and the wellness.
Interesting. So where do you find your instructors? Where do you find your people that will lead these classes?
Well, when I'm hiring directly, I look for them as, the best instructors for us are usually, customer service people that work in some kind of really intense retail job where they've had to make people happy under a lot of stress, or they're bartenders. It's not it's not about the technology, it's about the human content. And so, you're looking for a person with a giant personality who can really work with a group of people that are coming in with, enormous potential and great ideas, but they may be very anxious about that first step with the technology. So they need somebody that is going to help demystify and help people settle down and be comfortable, while also understanding that people are trying to go somewhere. And so we're embracing people's dreams at the same time. It's a really difficult job to be a trainer in technology, because on the one side, you have a lot of really basic information that people have never had a chance to learn. And so you're in this kind of very extreme novice scenario. But when you fill up a room full of older adults and they're learning technology, you're always going to have some people that are much more advanced or that have more skills. And so you've got this range of skills. And then as you're bringing up the people that are first-time learners to kind of catch up, then there's a kind of a escape velocity moment where people really start doing stuff. And you have to be able to actually capture that and work with people at a very high level very quickly. So there's a kind of social agility that's required of the trainers. And we look for people, many of them are, some of them are interested in social work, but many of them are really people that are social activists that have something else on the side. They're, actors or artisans or college professors or things. And they're really, they're doing the senior planet classes. It's a way of really connecting on a mission side there. So they can come from anywhere. I mean, I tried to hire the guy that worked at my deli a few years ago because he was so great with customers. But it really requires that social ability, and it's delicate. Some of the trainers, sometimes they're too condescending, and that's a danger. So we have to find people that can really speak respectfully and collaboratively. But on the other hand, sometimes they're too technical. They go too fast, and you need people that can also be good listeners.
Mm-hmm. So you have a senior planet in New York. That's your like your corporate headquarters, right?
That's a flagship. Well, there's two. There's a corporate headquarters in Brooklyn, which is over in Gowanus, in a cool old loft that still has stains on the floor from when the factory equipment was there. And our flagship location is in Chelsea, on 25th Street in Manhattan, the Senior Planet Center. And then we have other places as well around the country.
So you have a place in upstate New York you just opened?
Yes, we did a rural project in Plattsburgh, which covers the North Country of New York. So we're all over that county and in multiple locations there. And then we've been training in places like Watertown and over near Potsdam, picking up projects in small towns, mostly collaborating with libraries and some senior centers. And then we expanded. We're really very passionate about rural. So we've been doing work in rural communities here in New York, and then expanded into Colorado with a project that was a statewide initiative through Next 50. And that became still operating with a whole team out in Colorado that's running that initiative. And then Humana financed us to go to San Antonio a few years ago. So we've been working in San Antonio, and that has a little bit of a growth dynamic outside, and starting to get into other parts of Texas. And then if people are in Palo Alto, there's that wonderful Avenidas Center. And so they hosted us to become a partner there. We actually created a Senior Planet Center right there in Avenidas. In Colorado and Denver, we created a Senior Planet Center at the Lowry Air Force Base, which is super cool. It's like a hipster center for technology and aging. It's really worth looking at. If you get out to Denver, come visit. And all these programs, by the way, are free to the end user. People can just walk in and use them. And then we've had a longstanding relationship with Montgomery County, Maryland's technology department, and now the electrical company is financing us there. Let's see, I think that's all the current where we have people on the ground. And then we'll talk later about AARP, but we're now expanding into other states, and we are looking at creating other centers. Somebody flagged, asked about Florida, which is a high priority for a center at some point. We're also looking at places in the Midwest and Washington, D.C. So, we're going to slowly grow the centers. They're very, very intensive to get launched and to support, but they create a kind of anchor in a region for people to come and visit, and it makes a difference.
So your funding, how do you get your funding? And what kind of funding are you getting?
We get funding from, somebody just flagged Washington State. We were just on the call with Washington State, which now has a budget to do technology for broadband adoption. So we're hoping to do programming in Washington with this year. The funding comes, funding for nonprofit entrepreneurs. You have to be pretty omnivorous about it, I think would be a way to look at it. So when we started out, my background, in addition to running housing projects, programs, I used to work in politics. I worked running political campaigns. And so I knew all sorts of people through the political world, including Mayor de Blasio, who, when he was running for city council, back when he was like a young man that was hoping to have a career in politics before he even dreamed of becoming mayor, he ran his first fundraiser in my living room. And came to my birthday parties. He doesn't do that anymore, but he does stop and say hi at the gym. So, but I worked with all these people and we knew them. And so those relationships helped me get some access to public dollars, because New York City has a much larger budget than any other city in the country by a mile. And so there's all these little pockets of money floating around that you would never even imagine exist. But if you know when to ask and who to talk to, you can usually start to scrape together a few $1,000s here and there, and it starts to build something. And so even today, about 25% of our resources at OATS come from public contracts, primarily New York City and New York State. We have some small stuff in the other areas, like in Texas and Colorado, that we're looking at, that we've been able to raise. And then about a quarter of the money, this is sort of very rough estimates, about a quarter of the money comes from philanthropic relationships. So you've got foundations like the Weinberg Foundation and traditional, philanthropic donors that are in the aging world and in New York. Fan Fox is one of them, the Samuels Foundation, and others that have kept us going. We just heard yesterday that we were getting funded from the Consumer Technology Association that just gave us $30,000 to expand our capacity building programs around the country. So there's a lot of foundation money that comes in, and then roughly another quarter comes from corporate, and some of that is corporate philanthropy, and some of that is earned income. And what's really interesting about the work we've done over the years is we've taught, hundreds of thousands of older adults how to use technology. So we've got 3,000 pages of curriculum, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of metrics that we've evaluated, and we've got a team of experts that have really worked, that know a lot about this topic. And it turns out, if you're a big company, many times you have questions related to aging and technology. You're rolling out a product or service that, for which seniors are one of the primary targets, and you need to figure out how to do tech support, or you need to figure out how to do product design. I just, on my phone right now, have a text from somebody this morning. It's a robotics company that's working to do some robotics work in the healthcare field and wants to know if we'd be interested in doing some user testing with them. And so, you can write a price tag for that. It could be $100,000 or $500,000. You can really do these fairly substantial projects, helping banks, figure out how to train themselves to support older adults with online banking. And there have to be limits with it, because you don't want to do things that are, that work against seniors, or they're disingenuous or not reputable companies. But we've been able to work with some pretty good companies and help them do better work, including the city of New York as a client, by the way. We have not worked with the Milken Institute, but we are, and so we do these earned income partnerships, and that's been about a quarter of our resources over the years. And then we partner with AARP, so AARP is supporting us financially as well, more in a kind of supplemental way than as a core funder. So we're continuing to do all of our other work. And then we have about 2,000 individual donors right now. We're building our individual donor database this year, and we're hiring a development director who I think we found somebody, but don't tell anybody. We're in the last stages of interviewing on the development director job. So we're always actively fundraising. I think eventually our tip will be closer to a higher balance of individual donors, because our footprint is more national and we've got such a strong channel with the technology. But we are a great partner for corporate funders as well, and for the philanthropic sector. People really are investing. As Humana did a project with us this year called Aging Connected, and they did a $3 million grant to OATS, which was very substantial.
That's great. So technology, where do you get computers and the things that particularly in your do most of the people who come have their own iPads and laptops and computers, or do you supply laptops, computers, and whatever?
I would say it's a combination. So we certainly, at the centers where we train, we create technology spaces. And I would expand the term computer these days. It's really not only just computers anymore. So, 10 years ago, it was all computer labs, right? And then we realized that, in fact, a lot of learning doesn't take place in a lab. I'm not sure that a computer lab is, like, I spent a lot of time in computer labs, and I don't personally find them all that inspirational. It's kind of a weird space with all these screens, and it feels a little stiff. So what we started doing was creating more flexible learning environments where people we have iPads, we have Amazon Echoes, we have gaming systems, we've got computers. We'll have we have telepresence robots, and we'll set them up in the center so that people can experiment with them. We don't lock anything away. People can just try it out right there. And it really allows people to experiment and play with it. And when we teach classes, of course, we'll break out 15 iPads or 15 laptops or Chromebooks. We purposely narrowed down the technology at OATS so that we don't cover everything. Because there's a million different technologies that people might want to learn. So we focused on a few things that we thought were sort of mainstream that a lot of people would want to learn. We don't teach any senior focused technologies that are created for seniors. We just feel like they're not mainstream enough, and there isn't anything that's stable and big enough in terms of its application. And so we picked our technology that we focus on are the PC, the Chromebook, the iPad, and recently we've been doing some work with T-Mobile tablets, and that's it. And now that doesn't mean that you can't show up at our doorstep with some anything you want to bring in a shrink wrapper or not, and we won't help you, because we will. We help people with smartphones, we help people with jitterbug phones, we help people with Nooks and screen readers, and we do iPhones and Android for sure. The T-Mobile device is an Android base that we teach. And so we do a lot of different things, but we do them on a one-on-one basis so that we don't have to create a whole curriculum infrastructure in those frameworks, because there's so much variation. When you think about smartphones, there are thousands of different smartphone models. And so if we create one training system with a book and we've got pictures, it doesn't look like 90% of everybody else's phones. So you end up in these kind of choice-making scenarios, but we provide those platforms in our centers. All of our trainings mostly leverage those platforms, and then we'll do special seminars on different technologies, home security systems or lighting or Android devices or various things. And then the other thing that's important to mention is that technology is very personal, and so people, I can give people advice and we can help people understand their options, but they're going to make a personal choice. Sometimes it comes down to the form factor or how close the local store is where they can get help, or what their son or daughter uses that they're going to get support from. And so we try to let people make personal decisions about the technology as well, and support that, which we do a lot.
Okay, so you have a video that kind of tells a little.
This is a 2-minute interlude. Let's see if we can get this to
let's take that moment now to be able to share that video.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to maximize this. If the sound is not working, Vicki, just tell me and I'll fix it. All right, I'm going to try this here and go to the YouTube and so share, and then go to the large screen and then try to go. So San Antonio is the largest program in America, and you are like the first graduating class that I've seen here of this program, and I want to applaud you for that.
Well, the transformation is huge, and that happens sometimes in as short as 5 weeks. So even with just 5 weeks of courses, by the end of the course, the seniors, they're empowered and they're happy and they're joyful, and it's almost like they get that kind of like an addiction for more. Like I want more. I've learned how to do this. I feel confident, and once that confidence is there, they're just empowered to move forward even faster. I think what makes me the most proud about being a senior Planet instructor is seeing the students, once they've completed the course, really seeing that difference from the beginning to the end, and knowing that they now have skills that will improve the quality of their life. And technology is that tool that we're teaching them. We're giving them a tool, and then they can take that tool and use it to make their lives better and really improve the way they're aging. And that's the whole mission of the organization, is harnessing the power of technology to improve the way we age.
Senior Planet has really given me a new lease on life. I sounds exaggerated, but I feel at least 10 years younger. I feel like I lost so much time not knowing about this program. But I'm very, very grateful for the enlightenment, the fun, the new friends, to be a part of a group that wants to get ahead in life and not feel left out from the millennials and the general population, to be one more. It made me feel younger. Like the computers, so many windows of opportunity and fun.
So I want to say that Joyce and I, we belong to a group that Tom is also a member of. And Tom actually hosted us at the Senior Planet in San Antonio. So we had a bus ride to that Senior Planet. And when Tom walked in, all these happy graduates, Tom was like the rock star. Everyone, it was like people said, oh, Tom Kamber is here. Tom Kamber just walked in the door. And they were so happy to see him and embrace him for what this has meant to them. And it was so delightful for Joyce and I to have an opportunity to witness how much gratitude the participants had for what they learned. Makes me emotional. Sorry, don't ask me where that came from, but it just happened.
Well, and with that in mind, there are several, I'm watching the chat room, there are several people who are really interested in asking Tom questions. So we're going to segue now.
Nope. I want one more thing.
Oh, okay.
Besides Tom being the rock star for Senior Planet and running, he's also the co-founder of the Afro Latin Jazz Alliance, and that has won multiple Grammys. What is that about?
We just won another one this year.
Did you?
Yeah, crazy. We just won, I think, number 7. So, talk about transferable skills, right? Like I used to be, I have a lot of passion for Latin music. I came to New York to go to college, and I heard all these neat salsa songs going on in the streets, and I wanted to learn how to dance salsa music, and started going to shows and things like that. And I become sort of a bit of a novice dancer, and it was a hobby, and I was really interested in it. And one day I went to see a show of this guy that I thought was a real, who was one of my favorite musicians, a guy named Arturo O'Farrell, who was teaching, who was playing at Lincoln Center. And I managed to talk to him between sets, and I said, I'm such a fan of yours. And he said, what do you do? And I said, I run a nonprofit. He said, oh, I wanted to start a nonprofit because the orchestra is struggling. We're leaving Lincoln Center and we don't have any financial support. And we need a way to raise money and to organize this. And I said, well, I know a lot about nonprofits. I could help you. And the next thing I knew, I was having lunch with Arturo O'Farrell, and we started the Afro Latin Jazz Alliance to do Latin jazz, support the orchestra in their touring and their performance, and support new learning for people in the public schools in New York City, where we took these world-class musicians and put them in the classrooms with kids all over the city. And they got these youth orchestras up and running, and it's like spectacularly wonderful. I can't even tell you how great it is. And so the next thing that happened is they produced an album and they put it up for the Grammy, and they won. And that was a life-changing thing for everybody. And so now Arturo is kind of a big star, but we just had dinner the other night, and I'm still on the board. And it's just nice to see, like, when you do things in one sphere, all those technical skills around fundraising and strategy and management and what kind of office to get and how to handle, donor reports and all that stuff that you learn can be applied from, aging and tech into something like cultural affairs and music. And that really was a lesson that I learned, that you can sometimes get kind of two benefits from one route.
That's terrific. It's very interesting and very, very diverse, quite diverse, but yet very connected.
Check them out at afrolatinjazz.org. They've got all sorts of great stuff there. And they do Sunday concerts out of Birdland, so you can listen to them online. The concerts are amazing on Sunday evenings.
That's great. We'll check it out. Okay, now let's turn it open to questions. And Joyce, if you can take us, I think, out of speaker view and put us into gallery view so we can see who wants to ask Tom some questions.
Okay, you are you are in gallery view.
Okay, so anyone have a question for Tom Kamber? So I'm not seeing a lot of hands go up.
I have a question. I'm on the phone. This is Barbara Shaman. Tom, you blew me away. The work you're doing is beyond extraordinary. And thank you. I wish I could just be part of, without being at a senior center, just be part of your group. I was wondering if you were connected to any of the college programs, especially the CUNY system in New York, and working with college students to see if they could be providing these services and make it more of an intergenerational approach.
That's a great question. And I hope you'll connect with us online, even if you can't get to the center anytime soon. But we're doing programs every day on seniorplanet.org. So feel free to just join in for whatever looks fun. And on the CUNY side, I mean, I have such a connection to CUNY because that was where I did my graduate work, City University of New York. Many CUNY graduates have come in as interns and trainers. And we're constantly, it's almost like a channel for us on the recruitment side. So in the New York program, there's been an enormous amount of back and forth. We have not done a structured intergenerational program with them. We used to do a lot of intergenerational programs at OATS. And our first program ever was intergenerational. But then what we found, and this is kind of it's just a question of what your choices are, what your priorities are in terms of the organization. But we found that for many of the intergenerational programs, it was hard to keep the energy and the strategic focus on the older adults. And the young people often take so much precedence and there's so much desire to make sure they're having a great experience. And we felt that, in fact, when we typically were bringing in kids and having them teach with us, we had better outcomes when we had seniors teaching each other. We had more passion and more, we just found that there was more excitement, and my staff were more excited about it. I have 4 children, so I certainly have my reasons to love kids, but I really love working with older adults, and there aren't a lot of places to do it where you can really zero in on the actual experience of exploring what's possible with older people and with aging. And it's just a passion that we found. And there was always a little chatter with the intergenerational stuff that felt like it wasn't really it's central in our wheelhouse. So there are amazing organizations doing great intergenerational work all over the country. There's a wonderful group that Donna Butts runs that focuses on intergenerational work and supporting it. And then, funders that specialize in it. So we've kind of, we still do it a little bit, but it hasn't been a major focus lately.
Mm-hmm. I'm a Hunter alumnus.
Ah, excellent. I used to teach at Hunter. I love Hunter.
There's a question in the chat room, Tom, about wanting to be or learning about who are your trainers, how are they trained, and where do they come from? And might that be a possibility for people on this call or those who will be listening?
Yep. So our trainers are, at the moment, we're still hiring trainers with the expectation that they will be able to do something face-to-face in these communities. I'm very proud to say, by the way, through all of COVID, we didn't lose a single staff member for financial reasons. Like some people went to graduate school or whatever, but we didn't have any layoffs at OATS, which was really something that we were worried about. But our trainers now, we periodically hire in our 5 geographic areas where we've got people on the ground. We love to hire older adults. We prioritize hiring older people whenever we can. And there's the easiest way to get into the mix is to send over a note to jobs@oats.org. And also we advertise our programming when we do hire new people through AARP as well, because they're our sort of parent affiliate now. So they're helping us a lot of the recruitment and outreach. But if you're interested in applying to be a trainer, definitely apply through jobs@oats.org. Send a note and we'll try to find if there's any fit where we might be able to make something happen. And we train the trainers there's a whole series of training materials that we put to people that they have to work through. And then we have them shadow trainers in the classroom so they get used to the methodologies. And then we observe them while they're training, and then people eventually can you know, they can spread their wings a little bit and do it independently. There aren't, amazingly, we've got 42 trainers right now, and there's not a lot of turnover because people stick, man. We've got trainers that have been here for 10 years and they just keep coming back every quarter, and we keep hiring them because they're great. We are looking for people that speak other languages. So if you speak Chinese or Russian or Vietnamese, those kinds of in Spanish, those are priorities for us as well.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else have a question they want to ask Tom?
I see some hands up.
Jackie Wheeler.
Yes, go with Dawn Pyle.
Oh,
Dawn and
Jackie
then
Wheeler has a question too.
Okay, Dawn, yeah, unmute yourself. Oh, no? Okay, who is next? Margaret.
Jackie Wheeler.
Oh, okay. Jackie, you go, and then Margaret, you're up.
I'm on my phone, so I'm hoping you can hear me because I have to talk to the bottom of the phone. You're probably looking at the ceiling of my car. Anyway,
I am looking at the ceiling, but I can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Thank you, Tom. It's really, it's terrific to hear you speak. I've heard of OATS, and Vicki, you've done a terrific job in terms of moderating the conversation. Thank you. I have to say, I was born in Brooklyn. I have lived in Freeport, Long Island for a year, and then Old Westbury. I'm now in Massachusetts, you know, which is a very techie area. It's sort of like the, there was an article in the Boston Globe, that's the main rag here. And we were talking about, is Boston the longevity technology center or the longevity center? And I've been very active in Aging 2.0 Boston chapter heretofore. And so anyway, just sort of background. But my question is, I think I would love to look into the training. So I will look into that separately, being a trainer, I mean. And then I wanted to ask if you've considered partnering with companies, employers, or higher ed or whomever, in terms of making sure that seniors are current who need to and want to remain in the workforce, or maybe you're going back to the workforce. I have found there's a lot of stuff that's around about basic, you know, Microsoft Office, somewhat on Google, but not on things that are fairly unique, like how to use Salesforce or QuickBooks or things like that.
Slack,
so
right?
I'm wondering if you've seen an appetite for this. And I think Florida is crying for a terrific market.
The answer is yes. That's right down the middle of the plate for the kinds of things we do. I didn't mention it, but OATS has, we actually measure our impact in 5 impact areas, and none of them are technology. So if you ask me at the end of the year, what did you get done? I can't tell you how many people sent emails, and I can't tell you how many people, you know, bought an iPad or things like that. But I can tell you how many people reported that they earned more money or saved money as a result of our financial programming. I can tell you how many people made more friends and have more social engagement. I can tell you how many people feel like they were volunteering or able to vote remotely and things like that, because we really focus on these impact areas, and they're social engagement, financial security, civic participation, health and wellness, and creativity. And the financial security part of that has really, really focused on workforce development and entrepreneurship. We have a really amazing entrepreneurship program, but we're really interested in workforce support. And so if we could find a large enough partnership with a company or a sector where we could train their older adult workers to stay engaged, or we could pick a particular application like Salesforce and teach Salesforce for older workers as a way of keeping people employed, that would be of great interest to us.
Okay, great. Margaret, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Tom. It was great. Thank you for presenting. I had a question. When the groups met in person, the training provided both education as well as a sense of community and a connection for people. So they accomplished social needs as well as learning. Obviously, when things went remote, the opportunity to have that type of connection was gone. Have you been able to recreate it, or is that one of the things you're looking at, since I assume that you will continue a large amount of Zoom or remote learning, of trying to build in some of what you lost with the sense of connection and community?
Yes, absolutely. We're doing, several things happened around the connections that were really interesting. One is that people started coming earlier and staying later for a lot of the Zoom classes. So when they were coming for the repeat sessions, or certain people are very interested in certain topics, so they got to know each other. And I remember talking to a woman in Plattsburgh, New York, who had befriended a woman in Colorado, and they're both passionate about hiking. And so they've been sending each other, they started sending hiking videos back and forth, and then they became friends, and they're like Facebooking and whatever. And so that we've created a lot of I don't know if you'd call it water cooler environments within our programs, but the online programs are really leading to this kind of cross-fertilization, especially the fitness programs, because people go to them every day or every week, but it's really every day for most people. And they'll start calling, they'll notice if somebody drops off and say, what happened to Sophie? She's been here for 3 weeks and now she's gone, and they'll ask us to look her up and see how she's doing and bring her back in. And so people are making those informally, but with a little bit of support and instigation from us. We've created a new approach that we hope is going to be meaningful. It's a system called Buddy Boss. It's built in the WordPress environment, and we're just piloting it this month. Hopefully we can make this work. The concept is it's called Senior Planet Groups, and it would allow people to join groups online and connect to each other digitally, and create some kinds of bonds and dialogues. So that the topics that are coming up in Senior Planet, which range from, how do I do emojis to, people want to talk about the sex columnist, who's very popular. By the way, there's another topic that comes up a lot that people are interested in. And they want to, we're creating opportunities for people to dialogue and build some of that community. So I think we're scratching the surface on it. We're working hard to come up with the right platform. It's really hard to do well, and we don't want to do it and have it be kind of crappy or slapdash. And so that's a very high priority at OATS right now. And we're experimenting with the best way to maintain, to kind of create space for intimacy and space for contact, where you get to know people, and friendships. It's easy to do in the centers. It's hard to do online, but it's not impossible. And so we work on it every year. And I think we're 10% of the way we need to get to solve for it on our side, but we're trying.
I remember at a senior community, they served juice before and after the exercise, and at least half the attendees went for the juice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time to sit and talk.
Yep.
And they had to do the exercise in order to get to sit and talk.
Yeah, and we did a comedy night, and people hung around for like an hour afterwards, where seniors were doing their own comedy. They were doing stand-up, and then they all made friends afterwards. It was really cool.
Paul Mayer, you had a question.
Yes, Tom, thanks very much. Great program. Have you considered doing a program or finding a site in Connecticut for another training location?
We did. We've looked at Connecticut. One, it's a little close to New York. And so we're kind of, trying to spread things geographically around the country a little bit in terms of next steps. And we hadn't really been able to put something together up there yet. So we've got... We've partnered a little bit on a separate project with a group that does hospice work up in Connecticut, but we haven't been able to put together an actual senior plan initiative up there yet.
I ask because I know a developer who's looking to use a building that he's renovated, a very large old manufacturing building, and he wants it to make it a community training center. And he's looking for potential tenants to come in that building and do programs similar to what you've created here.
We're always happy to talk to people. So if he's got, a real passion for it and there's some resources available, we'd always happy to, we would never say no to an opportunity before hearing what it looks like. So put him in touch with us.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. I'll let you know.
Great.
Right. Hi, Tom, this is Sheena. I have a question about, have other countries adopted your model?
Not wholesale. We've done, the closest we've come is in Israel, where there's an amazing organization in Jerusalem called JDC Eshel. I think my camera's going out of focus, sorry. And Eshel is a national kind of aging strategy organization that works with the government, where they go around the world, they find great models, they bring them to Israel, they incubate them, and then they help launch them as national programs. And we did a project funded by the Weinberg Foundation a few years ago to train JDC Eshel staff and partner organizations with our framework and our model, and then they adapted the initiative in Israel. They sort of used a lot of our thinking as they built up a thing called Digital Israel, and that's going really strong. So I would say there's certainly some reflection of the OATS thinking there, but it's very adapted to the local environment, of course. And then I've trained and done workshops in probably 20 different countries now, but I don't think there's a country that's really adapted the program completely, whether it's for resources. There's a lot of interest in Greece and in Colombia and in Chile and Spain. But it takes, $1 million to get the stuff off the ground in most of these places. And they haven't really been able to generate enough cash flow to really create a viable model yet. There's some really interesting things in the UK, by the way, that are similar, but they're not our model, but they're comparable in quality and impact.
Right. So I had another meeting this morning with another organization that's here in Canada. I'm actually from Washington, D.C., but I'm in Canada. And I'm feeling that there is a need here. Would you be open to bringing your type of a model here? Like, is there a conversation we can have about that?
Sure. And we've talked to people in Canada as well. And Canada is one of the places that potentially does have resources to do it. So we could try to explore that. We've talked quite a bit with Baycrest in Toronto and CABHI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, and a couple of other groups around Canada. There was some group in Ontario that I did a workshop for a few months ago. So they may have heard of us, but we're always happy to talk.
Okay.
And I love Canada. We're big fans.
I am in Western Canada, in Alberta. So
great. Even better.
But I'll reach out to you. And by the way, we've met at the ASA meetings a few times. The first time you brought a robot to Washington, D.C., and I was totally fascinated by you. So
great. Well, I'm glad.
And I haven't stopped since then.
We'll get you at the next one. Come find me again. I'd love to see you again.
All right, Tom.
Hey, anyone else? That's terrific. Anyone else have a question for Tom? Okay.
Oh, actually, I have a question. This is Magda. I'm going to pick on Eileen's question. She put a question in the chat about creativity. I'm very active in creative aging, and I know some of the things that really came up this year, especially through COVID, was that these creative kind of networks of community started to build up. And now I'm doing a lot of work with people who are living with dementia. And one of the things I keep on hearing is that really this is being able to access something from their home is really a lifeline, because for many, it's very difficult to get out of the house, or maybe they only have part-time care partners. So I'm curious, is there some opportunity for building a large-scale network of creative aging in partnership with OATS? Do you think that that's something that might happen, or are you already planning it? And if yes, how can we help you build that?
Yes, I have been. Our creative expression work was always kind of episodic, because we're in New York City. So, the city is full of actors and performers and creators of a million different ways. So every year we were doing programs with the Museum of Modern Art or different initiatives. And then as COVID has happened and a few things have been changing and we've started to look more nationally, we started shifting gears. There is a national creative aging group. I want to say, I have to track down the name, that was reaching out to us. We've done some calls with them, and they are building a set of resources to support creative aging around the country. And we have been talking to them, and we're eager to put together a program with them. And I think later this year we would be doing that. So if you drop me an email, I can track down the names of those people and I can help you connect to them if you're interested.
Is it either Aroha or Lifetime Arts?
Yes, it's Lifetime Arts.
Okay.
Sorry, I was blanking on the
That's
name.
great. I'm happy to hear that. I will definitely drop you an email.
Yeah, they're
delighted.
really interesting, and we think that there's a real potential to work with them, and to, their expertise dovetails nicely with ours, and it would be a nice fit for us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
This is great.
We're kind of wrapping up. Unless I see any hands waving, I was going to say what's coming up next week is, how many of you have played pickleball or are interested in pickleball? No hands. Okay.
I want to know what it is.
There we go. So our speaker next week, or our guest next week, is Scott Moore. And he is a 16-time USA pickleball national champion. He is a 6-time Triple Crown winner. He is unquestionably the #1 senior male pickleball player in the world. And it's become a family business. His son, Dan, is also a national pickleball player in his age category. And his son, John, who's younger than that, is in the lower age pickleball category. They conduct clinics and training all over the United States to be able to teach people who are gravitating to pickleball how to play the game. You can make in pickleball, if you got a long reach, I guess, and whatever, in coordination, you can make up to $200,000 in prize money just from the prizes for being a winner. And pickleball has had a 650% increase in the number over the last 6 years. And the biggest growth, contrary to what you may think, is not the 60+ crowd, but with the younger crowd. So Scott Moore will be talking to us about how in the world did he get into pickleball? How in the world did he become such so passionate about pickleball that he's gone on to create a family business out of it? And I assume he's making some fairly good dollars. Our speaker,
well, Vicki, I experienced pickleball bullying, so I'll be interested in that.
I have to add, Vicki, that I have a niece who's in her 50s who teaches tennis and coaches tennis, and she's now getting certified in pickleball. She said she's addicted.
That's what's happening. I can't believe this. It's like, and you know, when we learned about pickleball, we had a speaker, our featured guest, Ken Brummel-Smith, and who some of you had an opportunity to listen to. And Ken, we, started talking about, he's gotten very connected to playing pickleball. And in fact, he's winning in Northern California. And he's the one, he said, you should have he said, this is really a fascinating growth phenomenon. You need to have Scott Moore as your speaker. And so we do. And so Scott Moore will be with us next week. And then the following week, we have a lady by the name of Ellie Katz. Ellie Katz is in Los Angeles. She was in Boston, and she runs a program called Sages and Seekers. And it connects an older adult, usually from a senior center, with a high school student. These are classes that are taught in high school, either to an English class or a history class, and it's an 8-week program. The first week is kind of sit in a round circle, and the generations get to know one another. Like, okay, what do you know about us older folks? And this is what we think of you younger folks. Are we correct or are we wrong? And then the next week is speed dating. The high school student picks a senior that they would like to work with and get to know more about. And then 4 to 6 weeks, they engage in lunches and conversations, and they get to know one another, more about each one's lives. And then the 7th week, the student has to write a 750-word article about their experience. What did they learn? What was their takeaway? What was their greatest lesson? And then the 8th week is kind of a debrief. What went right? What could we do better to improve it? How do we get more classes involved? So those are our upcoming classes for the next 2 weeks.
And you'll be pleased to know that Ellie Katz is sitting right here among us. So Ellie, wave to everybody.
Oh, there you are. I didn't even see you, Ellie. Did I do a good
You'll
job?
get to meet Ellie up close and personal just in a couple weeks. And the other thing that I love as a former educator that Ellie's doing is bringing it to English classes where writing and speaking are all part of their curriculum anyway. And so this adds a whole other intergenerational dimension to what they're doing. And then to history classes, because look at the history that our elders have lived through. And here it's living history where they can not only read about it, but they can hear stories about it, real stories from their family. And so Ellie will bring a whole dimension to us that we're thrilled about, and we're really looking forward to it. So Ellie, welcome. Thank you for joining us this week, and we look forward to your session.
It's been a pleasure to listen to Tom. It's going to be a hard act to follow, Tom, and then the pickleball, but I'll work on it.
I have another question for you, and that is someone, or perhaps it's someone else on the call, mentioned about wanting to open a center in Connecticut somewhere. I was just curious whereabouts in Connecticut, because I think of having summered and then been there later year round in Brantford, which I put in the chat. It's sort of like there's Fairfield County and everything else in Connecticut. And when people talk about the city, they're talking about New York, not Boston. And I was just wondering if, it was maybe a geographically more remote area of Connecticut, or maybe we could touch borders with 4 New England states.
There you go. It would depend a lot on the sort of aggregation of resources over time. The challenge with a lot of the centers, if you're running a full-on technology themed center, you're going to have to hire, 4 or 5 staff at least, plus the trainers. It requires some fundraising, it requires facilities. So you start to get into questions about just the whether there's enough of a kind of concentration of ongoing funding. You could probably get one off the ground, but you have to keep running it every year. So I'd be happy to talk to somebody if you wanted to think about how to do it. Sometimes it makes sense to just create OATS programming or something similar, add an existing program or center and enhance what they're doing. And we're always happy to help with that stuff. It's easier to do and it's more sustainable in terms of the overall institutional factors.
Joyce, Jay Donaldson is in the waiting room.
Vicki, I'm going to need to run because I have another call I have to get onto. So.
Okay, Tom, before you go, our gratitude. It was just
well, thank you
to you for what you're doing and the number of seniors that have benefited from your program and the inspiration that you have provided to those seniors to become their favorite rock star.
Well, thank you for that. And Vicki and Joyce, we met whatever it is now, 5 or 6 years ago. It's been a while. And you have always been such great sources of advice and encouragement. Helped me meet people and came to the center, and it's really meant a lot. It's hard when you start a new thing and you're trying to do it and you don't know if it's going to work or who's going to help. And you really put wind in our sails every time that we got together, and it means a lot to me.
Thank you very much. We have some other wind we want to put in your sail, and we'll send you an email about it that we think is a unique opportunity that you might want to explore.
Always happy to hear from you about things.
Okay, guys, it is for those of you who have to go fix dinner or whatever you want to do, feel free to do so. For those who want to hang around at the bar and chat for a while, we'll hang with you. We thank you very much for joining us and being a part of our Pause for Purpose this Wednesday.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you
or
so
welcome.
much.
Thank you.